I've mentioned to you before that my wife and I are watching and have watched an Apple TV show, The Drops of God. It is a show about vineyards, rare wine, and a father whose legacy is complicated as he was. Without spoiling too much, the father in that story built an extraordinary vineyard that produced amazing wine, but he destroyed the people all around him, including his daughter. And it's that story that makes me think about Isaiah chapter 5. But what's interesting is that it's also about a vineyard. Isaiah 5 is also about a father figure and a legacy go wrong. But the distinction between the show and Isaiah 5 is the twist, and that's what this sermon is all about, is about the twist, in the sense that the father does not deserve the blame in Isaiah 5, for the father is God, and he did everything right. He cleared the ground, planted the best vine, he built a watchtower, he dug a vat, he built a fence. Nothing was left undone, and the fruit of this vineyard was still rotten. And that rotten vineyard is referring to Israel and also to us. And the question I want you to ask this morning, I want you to think about it this way, okay? What do you do when God has done everything and we still produce rotten fruit? What if he has blessed us beyond blessing us and ways of loving us as a loving father, and we sin away his blessing? Anyone in here familiar with sinning away your blessing? It's something that we've all experienced in our life, and it's pretty clear here in Isaiah 5 what they're doing. And Isaiah 5 is very unique in prophetic literature. It's a song. And I'm not going to sing it to you. But let's look at Isaiah 5. And this is not a song that you would hear at Coachella or on the Lawrence Welk show. This is a very distinct song that starts out as a love song and turns into a funeral march. Interesting. Let's go for it. Isaiah 5, verse 1. Let me sing now for my well-beloved a song of my beloved concerning his vineyard. My well-beloved had a vineyard on a fertile hill. He dug it all around, removed its stones, and planted it with the choicest vine, and he built a tower in the middle of it, and also hewed out a wine vat in it. Then he expected it to produce good grapes, but it only produced worthless ones. Isaiah is singing about this vineyard, and obviously the owner is the well-beloved, who is God, and the vineyard is Israel. God dug around it, he fenced it, prepared the soil, choicest vine, premium stock, built a watchtower, hewed a vat, every step with lavish investment. This is not a hobby garden. This is not your tomatoes growing on your porch. This is a significant garden. Maximum effort. And it echoes the entire love story that God has been doing for Israel in choosing them among the nations, delivering them from Egypt, bringing them into the promised land, blessing them beyond blessing them. God has done the work. And he had expectations that when he would go to the vineyard, he would have good fruit. But verse 2 tells us at the very end, he expected to produce good grapes, but it produced only worthless ones. God expected justice. He got bloodshed. He expected righteousness, and he heard cries of distress, and his justice rotted into violence. What do you do with a life that has been well-watered, well-taught, and well-protected, and still produces nothing? I know some of you have raised your children in Christian schools, Christian home. You took them to church Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night. You actually loved them. You lived in your home what was taught in the church, and yet your children have taken that blessing and they sinned it away. Everything was built just right for them to follow the Lord, and they've gone off the rails. How does that make you feel? That's the way the Father feels about Israel right here. He continues on. Look at verse 3. And now, O inhabitants of Jerusalem and men of Judah, judge between me and my vineyard. What more was there to do for my vineyard, and I have not done in it? Why then? I expected it to produce good grapes. Did it produce worthless ones? God's like, look at the evidence. What more could I have done for you? I did everything I could possibly do for you, and here you are producing worthless grapes. The fault lies not with the Father. The fault lies with Israel. Verse 5. So now let me tell you what I'm going to do to my vineyard. I will remove its hedge, and it will be consumed. I will break down its walls, and it will become trampled ground. I will lay it waste. It will not be pruned or hoed, but briars and thorns will come up. I will also charge the clouds to rain no rain on it. I don't know if you've ever been in prayer meetings and someone has prayed a hedge of protection around you. You say, Lord, I just ask that you give them a hedge of protection. And you're thinking to yourself, what in the world is a hedge of protection? But we pray it all the time. The hedge is a concept of a fence or a thorny briar to keep out danger. When you're praying for someone to have a hedge of protection, you're praying for God to protect them. But I want you to look what God says he's going to do with that hedge of protection in verse 5. It says right there in the middle of it, it says, I will remove its hedge. God removes his hands. His hedge invaders come in from Assyria to take away Israel, Babylon to take away Judah. And I want to tell you something. One of the most dangerous things that can ever happen, and one of the most terrifying judgments, is not what God sends, it's what God withdraws. You think, well, God's going to bring it against you. Well, what if God just said, I'm going to remove my hand from you completely, and let's see how it goes? You think about people in their lives, they're constantly pushing God away. God, get away from me. God, get away from me. God, get away from me. And they end up in hell, and they say, God, what are you doing? And you say, you told me to get away from you. And here's where I'm at. What if God just removes his hedge around you? Just removes his protective hand on you? What would happen? Well, what is God talking about? Look at verse 7. For the vineyard of the Lord of hosts is the house of Israel, and the men of Judah his delightful plant. Thus he looked for justice, but behold bloodshed, for righteousness, but behold a cry of distress. If there's any doubt who God is talking about in this vineyard, he's talking about Israel. He's talking about Judah, northern kingdom, southern kingdom. He looked for justice, but he got bloodshed. He looked for righteousness, but he got cries of distress. They spurned his love. They abused one another through stealing of the land, oppression, 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 and God's going to bring them to judgment. Now, I asked someone this week, I said, if that's the way God's viewing Israel, how did Israel view Israel? I mean, what did they think? Did they think that things were going well for them? Like, what did they think? And I think I'm going to explain it like this. The kind of fruit that Israel was producing in their minds was probably good grapes, good fruit. My wife and I took my son to McDonald's this week as a treat after his track meet, and we took him through. He did not want dinner. He just wanted dessert. We said, sure, we're such good parents. And we ordered something called a McFlurry, which you've had at McDonald's before. But this McFlurry is a one-time deal. It's called a Derpy McFlurry. And if you don't know what a Derpy is, well, Derpy is a character in the movie K-Pop Demon Hunter. And if you don't know what that is, you do not talk to your grandkids ever. So we got him this Derpy McFlurry. He got it, and it looks like there is this fruit inside of that. And he starts eating it. We're like, what is that fruit inside of there? And he said, I have no idea, but it is really good. It looks like fruit, but it's not. It looks super good, but it holds zero nutritional value. And I would say that's the way I think Israel viewed their fruit. It's good tasting. But God called it worthless. And I want to ask you, what do you think your life produces? Do you think your life produces good fruit or just derpies? Good fruit of good works or fruit produced that is just worthless. Now, what's going to follow in the rest of the chapter here is something called woes. And I don't mean, whoa, look at that car. I mean, woe, W-O-E. This is something that God disapproves of. And if you're wondering, what's so bad? What were God's people doing? Well, I'm about to tell you in 6 woes. You can think about a cluster with 6 grapes. I don't care how you think about it. We're going to look at the woes and see what was Israel doing that was so wrong. So let's look at verse 8 for the first woe. Woe to those who add house to house and join field to field until there is no more room, so that you have to live alone in the midst of the land. First woe. Greedy land barons monopolizing property, displacing the poor. You have these wealthy elites amassing more and more land amidst of the peasant suffering, and you go, well, what does that look like in modern day? You could say, well, it looks like predatory lending, elder financial abuse, or payday loan traps. I don't want to get into that, but I want us to dig deeper. What were they doing there? Look at verse 9. In my ears, the Lord of hosts has sworn, surely many houses shall become desolate, even great and fine ones without occupants. For 10 acres of vineyard will yield only 1 bath of wine, and a homer of seed will yield but an ephah of grain. So here's the consequences, okay? They're taking more and more land. They're oppressing the poor. This is happening throughout all of Israel. And God says this, you took more than you needed, now then you will have less than you need. You took more than you needed, now you will have less than you need. And then I was thinking about this. I'm thinking, how in the world can the American church, or our church, us as individuals, what would that look like to be taking more than we needed and having less than we need? And perhaps, I'm just going to throw this out there, perhaps it's when we start to upgrade our lifestyle, bigger house, nicer car, better neighborhood. So you're upgrading your lifestyle while your giving stays the same. Can anybody relate to that? You're like, oh yeah, that's me. No one's going to admit to that, right? Lifestyle upgrade, giving stays the same. And maybe God said, you know what? You're taking more than you need. I'm going to give you less now than you want. That's a woe he pronounces upon Israel. And let's look at the second woe. Verse 12. Their banquets are accompanied by lyre and harp, by tambourine and flute, and by wine, but they do not pay attention to the deeds of the Lord, nor do they consider the work of his hands. So they're having parties, they're getting drunk, they're filling their lives with noise, they are distracted, they're not considering the work of God's hands. Do you ever talk to people in the village, you want to tell them about Jesus, but they're just so busy. They keep the movement up. And some of them, have secret addictions. I mean, did you know that it's like a rising substance abuse in retirement communities? Are you familiar with this? We are told that 1 out of 11 adults in the village or any retirement community or any older demographic that have this epidemic, that 1 in 11 are battling with some type of substance disorder, misuse of alcohol, misuse of prescription medication, misuse of marijuana, opioids, and that's creating falls and health collapse and elevated risk of accidents and overdose. It's because I really think we have a lot of pain. And rather than go to God, let's just deal with this pain, let's deal with this suffering, let's deal with this depression, we just kind of cover it up, we mask it, and we keep ourselves numb or distracted. And God's trying to get our attention, and we just pop another pill, we just keep drinking. God's trying to get our attention. Just turn the music up. We don't need to hear God. Turn the music up. Let's just stay distracted. Whoa. And then he continues, we're not going to even look at this, but at 13 through 17, he talks about punishment. You're going to go into exile. Your pride's going to be leveled. But let's jump to the third woe, verse 18. Verse 18 says, woe to those who drag iniquity with the cords of falsehood and sin as if with cart ropes. That's the picture of pulling sin like oxen are addicted. They're unrepentant. The image is very vivid. These people aren't stumbling into sin. They are harnessing themselves to it and pulling it with everything they have. It's like they're dragging sin like a cart around. And maybe you're saying, there's something I'm dealing with. God understands. I'll deal with it later. It's like you're pulling this rope of your sin, and it gets heavy every single year. And so God says in verse 19, who say, let him make speed, let him hasten his work, that we may see it, and let the purpose of the Holy One of Israel draw near and come to pass, that we may know it. And it's like mocking God, like, I've been doing this sin so long, and if it's sin so long, how come God's not judging me? He's not disciplined me yet. Are you sure what I'm doing is wrong? Because I have been consistently doing it, and God's doing nothing. It's a mocking of God. If you're real, prove it. And if you're involved in my life, prove it. But until then, I'm going to keep going to what I want to do. Which brings us to our fourth woe. And if this fourth woe does not describe our country, I don't know what else does. Look at verse 20. Woe to those who call evil good and good evil, who substitute darkness for light and light for darkness, who substitute bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter. If I asked you to turn to your neighbor right now and I said, okay, I want you to give me one instance in this country where we call something evil good, and when we call something that is very good evil. I mean, you would have so many examples of what is happening in our country. I mean, just stories that kind of just blow your mind. So you have a famous athlete, he's married, he has kids, things are going great. He decides that he's gay, he leaves his wife, he leaves his kids, and the media celebrates. What? Yeah, he's living his true identity. He's living in his true self. That's much more important than his wife, who's over here crying, and his kids who are left desolate. That's our culture. That's what we live in. And if we're not careful, what you will find is Christians will start to call things that are evil good. We will flip and we'll say things that are good are evil. You watch, just look, just read. Occasionally, you will see Christians even doing this. And I see this progression. If you're not careful, you'll see it in your own life, where we can move from where we're saying, okay, I am a bad person. I have done something totally wrong. You feel that sin, that conviction. But if you're not careful, you will move from there to here, and you say, well, what I did was wrong. So over here, you're like going, I'm a bad person. No, I can't believe this. But over here, you're going, what I did was wrong. And then you progress a little bit more, and you say, you know what? Is it really wrong? And if you progress even further, you go, I'm not so bad. I'm actually good. Do you see the progression? We can see the progression culturally. We can see the progression even in the church. But if you're not careful, you may miss the progression even in your own life. That's the woe. That's the woe. Let's look now at the next woe. Verse 21. Woe to those who are wise in their own eyes and clever in their own sight. The most dangerous person to be around is the person who has never really asked themselves, am I wrong? Could I be wrong? I mean, is there anyone in here that's always right? I mean, there's no one's going to raise their hand. Okay, is there anybody married to someone in here who always thinks they're right? Yeah? That's a better question, right? Are you ever wrong? And you're like, no, not really. And if we're not careful, we will find that the people that we champion, whether they are politicians or friends, sometimes you can latch yourself to a friend or a politician or a leader, and you're so supportive of them that they are never wrong. Never. And you have a society like that, what are you going to have? Division. What do we have right now? Division. Where each side says, our leaders are never wrong. collapse. Look at the next woe, the last one, verse 22. Woe to those who are heroes in drinking wine, and valiant men in mixing strong drink. Now, this is not talking about fraternities and sororities. That's another sermon for another time. Verse 23. Who justify the wicked for a bribe and take away the rights of the one who are in the right. So these are judges. These are judges. These are people in authority who are taking bribes, who are oppressing the poor. You can think about Enron and the scandal. You can think about crypto, billionaire, FTX scandals. You can think about a lot of scandals up here where those in authority are just cutting the people out from underneath them. And God says, I see these in your society, Israel. I see these, Judah. Here comes judgment. Verse 24. Therefore, as a tongue of fire consumes stubble and dry grass collapses into the flame, so their root will become like rot, and their blossom blow away as dust, for they have rejected the law of the Lord of hosts and despised the word of the Holy One of Israel. On this account, the anger of the Lord has burned against his people, and he has stretched out his hand against them and struck them down. And the mountains quaked, and their corpses lay like refuge in the middle of the streets. For all this anger is not spent, but his hand is still stretched out. Do you realize what's going to happen? The northern kingdom is about to be overrun by Assyria, taken away, and they will disappear essentially. Assyria is going to knock on the door of Judah, but Babylon's going to finish off them, take them into exile. Do you realize there's going to be a lot of death, a lot of bloodshed, and an entire disaster? And what's interesting, that as God's hand is stretched out, there is still time for repentance. Did you know that there are little windows in the history of Israel where a good king comes up and reigns, and God pulls back and he waits a little bit longer for judgment because there's been some repentance? But that doesn't look like it here. He's bringing on the full judgment. The chapter ends in verses 26 through 30 with no resolution, just darkness, just knocking on the door of about to go into exile. And this chapter is crystal clear about what happens to those who do these things, whether in Isaiah's day or in our day. And you see this chapter and you go, well, this doesn't have to do with the church. This doesn't have to do with America. This doesn't have to do with anything. And so I ask you to think about these things on what it could look like in your life today to ignore the discipline of God. Perhaps if you ignore the discipline of God, your life will lose its peace and fruitfulness. What used to feel blessed starts to feel empty and dry. Perhaps if you are ignoring the discipline of God, the things you trusted for security, whether it's money or status or comfort, get taken away. Or maybe if you're ignoring the discipline of God, you face real consequences, broken relationships, financial pressure, spiritual dryness, or public exposure of hidden sin. We could say in modern times, this is a slow personal unraveling until the person who once walked with God wakes up one day and realizes how far they have fallen. But you know what's more scary than any of that stuff I just described? Is living a life of habitual sin and having zero consequences. If you are in here right now living a life of habitual sin with zero confidence, with zero consequences, you should be afraid. Because God only disciplines his children. And if you're not experiencing the discipline of God, maybe you're not his child. Let that scare you so much it draws you back to him. Because we want God to give us consequences. We want God to discipline us. Because a good father loves his kids and he disciplines his kids for their benefit. So what's the solution for Israel? What's the fix going to be for Israel? They're going to go into exile. Where's the fix? Where's the hope? Come on, you're the pastor. Come on, give us something hopeful. Well, I just want to tell you, They don't figure it out. They don't get their act together. They don't fix it. They really do go away into exile. They really do get slaughtered by the thousands. The vineyard is ruined. But then many years later, Jesus shows up and he says this, I am the true vine. Not just a better vine, I am the true vine. And where Israel failed as the vine, the vineyard, they had no justice. Jesus brings justice. They had no righteousness. Jesus is the vine that produces righteousness. I am the true vine. And he's such the true vine that he's going to lay down his life for the failed vineyard. God's full wrath didn't land on Israel. God's full wrath landed on Jesus. And all those in here, around the world, who've spent their lives producing worthless grapes, worthless fruit, rotten fruit, can find forgiveness in the true vine. No matter what you've done, you can find forgiveness in the true vine. But going forward, I want you to know this. This is not a sermon about just be better, just do better, just work harder. This is a sermon about those of us who realize that we can't do better, we can't work harder. We need hope, we need help, we need Jesus. Jesus says this, I'm the true vine. If you abide in me, you'll bear fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing. And the Father's in charge of this vineyard, this vine of Jesus. And he says, oh yeah, by the way, those whom he loves, he prunes. Ouch. He disciplines. He cuts. He grows us. Maybe some of you are in a season right now of some deep discipline, and that has such love for you. God loves you. That doesn't feel like love. I understand that, but he loves you. So this morning, I don't want to leave you with Isaiah 5. I want to leave you with John 15, where I am the true vine. I don't want you to spend your time this week meditating on Isaiah 5. If you want to, that's fine with you. But John 15, I'm going to read this to you now. I'm going to give you a challenge. I rarely ever tell you to do anything as a pastor, right? I'm so easy on you. But let me encourage you this week. Every day, read this portion of John 15. Verses 1 through 11. Every day this week, when you get up, stay up, whatever, read this portion about the true vine and those who truly bear fruit. Every day until we meet again next week. And get this, I'll let this reading that I'm about to do right now count for today. It's on you to do it the rest of the week. This vine does not fail. This vine is not worthless. And all who abide in this vine bear real fruit. Let's read it, John 15, starting at verse 1. I am the true vine, and my Father is the vine dresser. Every branch in me that does not bear fruit, he takes away, and every branch that bears fruit, he prunes, so that it may bear more fruit. You are already clean because of the word which I have spoken to you. Abide in me, and I in you. As the branch cannot bear fruit of itself unless it abides in the vine, so neither can you unless you abide in me. I am the vine. You are the branches. He who abides in me and I in him, he bears much fruit. For apart from me, you can do nothing. If anyone does not abide in me, he is thrown away as a branch and dries up, and they gather them and cast them into the fire, and they are burned. If you abide in me and my words abide in you, ask whatever you wish, and it'll be done for you. My Father is glorified by this, that you bear much fruit, and so prove to be my disciples. Just as the Father has loved me, I have also loved you. Abide in my love. If you keep my commandments, you will abide in my love, just as I have kept my Father's commandments and abide in his love. These things I have spoken to you, so that my joy may be in you, and that your joy may be made full.